come on, get your plates and forks. Time for your minds to be fed.
A mile and a half west of the Illinois-Indiana border is a farm that my grandparents have owned for 40 plus years. I can only imagine if they knew early on that their farm would become a life-changing empire. After the attack on Pearl Harbor, my grandfather, Shoal Jordan, was drafted into the U.S. Navy during World War II at 19 years old. He was stationed as a seaman in Norfolk, Virginia, then later at Naval Station Great Lakes, north of Chicago. In 1945, he received an honorable discharge and headed to Chicago to stay with relatives. While riding home on the train, he saw Doris Brown. They met when he was 17 at a friend's birthday party. A game was played where he climbed into a 10-foot well and had to be kissed to get out. He chose Doris to kiss him. Her hair was beautiful, as well as her smile. On his 23rd birthday, a couple of months after seeing her on the train, they were pronounced Mr. and Mrs. Jordan. Their early years as husband and wife were abysmal and tumultuous. Mr. Jordan was a great provider to his wife and 4 children, but his unyielding strictness and callous demeanor was burdensome. The rampant dysfunction, constant anger, and unresolved bitterness in their home was too much for Mrs. Jordan to bear. On 3 separate occasions, she tried to take her life. A saleswoman delivering household products began to share advice, comfort, and prayer with Mrs. Jordan. Church was not a priority in her house, but she took the woman's advice. She prayed on her own, spoke words of love, and showed an outward display of tenderness around her family. Changes were gradual but effective. She soon became a born-again Christian. A few years later, so did her husband, who himself became an ordained minister. In 1968, under the tutelage of Bishop Goldsberry, Mr. Jordan spent 1 month on 2 missions in Africa. This experience would feed an even greater perspective into his budding ministry back home. From her own past experience, Mrs. Jordan's compassionate desire to reach out and help other families steadily grew within her. She just did not have the space. While volunteering at a nursing home, she heard of a co-worker's husband who owned an old and unused farm. Once my grandparents saw the farm, they wanted it. The 49-acre farm property, buildings and all, was purchased for $25,000 in 1970, equal to nearly $148,000 in 2012. My grandfather quit his job at a Chicago GM plant and moved the family out of the recently built home. They left the city for Momence, Illinois, an agricultural town of over 3,000, about an hour south of the city. The monumental task of getting things up and running was not for the faint of heart. Undaunted, my grandmother started tearing down a dilapidated leaning barn that she hated. Country life became enjoyable and fulfilling, and the farm blossomed into full swing. My grandparents expanded the farm, both in 1982 and again in 1985, to accommodate the many needs of families in the region. All of this while raising 4 horses, 8 sheep, 11 pigs, 20 geese, 20 ducks, 20 hens, and a 900-pound hog, in addition to running a popular farmers market. My grandfather taught his farming and building skills to many young boys on the farm to demonstrate various responsibilities. They helped him to construct a small chapel right on the farm grounds, in addition to helping him run the farm. Weekly church services would be held here for many years, further shaping my grandparents' commitment in ministry.
Tell him what you want.
Oh, Jesus is on the main line.
Tell him what you want.
A mile and a half west of the farm is an additional house my grandparents purchased, known as the Red House, from the color of the older siding, which has since been replaced. My grandparents mainly stayed here, and it was a sometimes quiet retreat for them away from the much busier farm. My grandparents eventually took in 9 foster children under their wings of protection, guidance, and nurturing. The boys would stay at the farmhouse, and the girls at the Red House. Their 4 adult biological children would bring grandchildren into a family which grew exponentially. Hard work and education were greatly emphasized into raising each child to become a responsible adult. From their boundless outpouring of support to children and families from all over, Mr. and Mrs. Jordan were endeared to them as Granny and Grandpa, names which they took on as their personal preference. My grandparents' establishment has always been colloquially known as the farm. From 1978, the official name was the Garden of Prayer Deliverance Center, as a nonprofit endeavor meant as a community and family outreach. In 1995, a subsidiary was created, the Garden of Prayer Youth Center, fully incorporated in 1997. Since the very beginning, the name was joked about and frowned upon by some for sounding too plain or too churchy. Complicating matters, Garden of Prayer was often mistaken for Garden of Eden, an unincorporated residential community 6 miles east of Momence. My grandparents shrugged off these things, kept on going, and stood behind their chosen name.
My wife is a dreamer. We both are dreamers. I dream and she dreams. And so we go into prayer. We ask God to help us and show us things what we should do. And God give us the dream, God in the prayer, and showed her the vision. And that's how God in the prayer came, through a vision which God showed her. See?
The farmhouse was a stomping ground where neighbors, friends, and relatives of all ages gathered. Anyone who stopped by were in for some of the best farm-grown, lovingly prepared, heartiest meals around. Fellowship, stories, concerns, and life predicaments were often shared at the table. My grandparents saw this as opportunities to reach out to them, encouraging and praying for them. Guests would often leave with food in their bellies and also strength in their souls. The fall season was a busy and memorable time for kids who came to the farm for a ton of activities, including the highly anticipated hayride. The farmhouse table is still the place where relationships continue to build. The Garden of Prayer has been a grand presence at Moments' annual Gladiolus Festival, displaying some of the best-known floats. The 75-year-old event is one of the largest in the area. Life on the Farm, created in 1989, was one of Garden of Prayer's many outreach programs regionally serving children and their families, but the aging farm could not meet the sheer magnitude of larger groups of people with growing needs. Something had to be done, and quickly. The Jordans' oldest daughter, Vernice, tightened her bootstraps and rose to the challenge. Over the years, Vernice Maloney has become a humanitarian tour de force for the Garden of Prayer. She would play a myriad of roles, including director, spokeswoman, and overseer of grants and fundraising. Her leadership role was increasingly prominent in the mid-90s, shortly after her father had retired from full-time farming. My grandparents, then in their 70s, stepped down as directors and passed the torch to Vernice.
I write grants. I write my faith into the grant. I show them what faith can do in a child's life. I keep notes of a child's progress. I write specific program for a child's need, and the money comes in. I know that I can touch a child, and the love comes from me to that child can change that child's attitude. I can go into a home, and the love of Jesus that can come from me to that family can bring deliverance in that home. Do I talk to them about the love of God? Yes, I do. I worked for Department of Mental Health for 18 years. And I resigned, that they were very, very shocked because of the position that I did hold, and also the financial income. So that was in 1995. I resigned there.
Her distinctive personality and nurturing character made her the most sought-after person at Garden of Prayer, and also one of the most recognized women in the county. It wasn't uncommon for her to have 3 to 4 hours of sleep a night with her demanding schedule and exasperating workload. To her, if that meant that it made a difference, it was all worth it.
I feel good about the services that I have provided all these 25 years. I feel very, very good about it.
Grandpa may no longer ride the tractor, but farming has never left him. The importance of family continues here, as well as the foundation of their faith. a name that literally means free man. Vernice's husband, Franklin, has always freely shared extraordinary and uncompromised wisdom in his service as a minister, Garden of Prayer co-director, and mechanic. Cordially soft-spoken and keenly observant, his authoritative presence among the youth earned him the nickname Uncle Frank.
I was mostly fearful because I didn't know exactly what to do in terms of how to work in the ministry based on what God have called me to do. In other words, I know exactly where I fit in terms of what role I play. But God in prayer was my mother-in-law greatest desire was to help people, the less fortunate and also the homeless.
His marriage to Vernice has endured decades. They have kept their respect, loyalty, and passion through thick and thin for an awe-inspiring 45 years.
I and you is us. What hurts you hurts me. What hurts me hurts you. It's not this is mine and that's yours. This is ours.
Kankakee, the town of 27,000 named after the river which passes through it. The name itself means land of an open view. It is here in town where you'll also find the business hub of Garden of Prayer. The original office was once a spare room at the farmhouse. Now, it's a rather pleasant second-floor suite with several rooms in which all business aspects of the organization take place. The oldest son of the Maloneys, Michael, now leads Garden of Prayer as executive director, gaining the adoration of countless children from his playful humor and caring protectiveness, illuminated him as a quintessential father figure to them. His sharp-wittedness and tenacity for getting things done solidified him as trustworthy.
I went to Moments High School. I'm a graduate of Moments High School back in 1988. Then I went on to Southern Illinois University and I got a bachelor's degree in liberal arts. And then I went to Chicago State and got a master's degree in community counseling. And I also hold a license in clinical professional counseling. And then I went on to DeVry to get my master's in business administration. So that's pretty much my educational background. My parents and my grandparents has taught us to have faith. And that's not only to have faith in God, but have faith in the goodness of people, and to have faith that people will have faith in themselves, or that kids will have faith in themselves to grow and aspire to something positive.
A major mark in the Garden of Prayer timeline came as Vernice and Franklin Maloney handed the directorial reins into the third generation, their two sons.
This is my time to let them have it, and my husband and I, we prayed about it, and we just released the reins. Now, it doesn't mean that we don't have input. It does not mean that at all. We meet every week to make sure everything is going according to the vision that my parents instilled in me.
Michael's younger brother Marcus was a phoenix rising in his late teenage and early adult years with a consistent work ethic and personable demeanor that drew people. At first, he was reluctant to take on the higher call to duty on Garden of Prayer's board of directors, but once there, he hasn't looked back.
It was very difficult. Actually, it wasn't a task that we readily jumped into. through much prayer and counseling, we decided to move forward with the organization because we knew that you had to be dedicated in what you're doing in order to succeed. Try and make sure that everyone understands that this is a family and not just a business, not just an organization. So when a family member is hurting or in need, then the family has to pull together and make sure we provide for that individual that's in need.
With kind donations, sponsors, and private funds, the wheels were finally rolling for the acquisition of yet another needed facility. This centerpiece of Garden of Prayer's expansion was named in honor of my grandparents. It's a specifically tailored facility, complete with a tutoring room, computer room thanks to grants from Best Buy, an honorary wall of history and accolades, a classy entrance, and a top-notch multi-purpose hall for hosting everything from baby showers to local events.
That this is something that the ministry needed. We knew that, you know. So my dad, bless his heart, him and my mom was the one that gave us the down payment of $1,000 to secure it, you know, so no one else would sell it. So purchase it. So we are most grateful. Like I said, we don't take no credit for any of this. The only thing we can say, we know that we live by faith and not by sight. And God is so faithful, so very faithful.
A former educational building is in the works to become a premier child care and early childhood development center. It's a beacon of change in a partially downtrodden neighborhood section of Kankakee's west side. When it comes to Kankakee, how the town works, and the depth of its needs, a lifelong resident and a seasoned veteran of both the Kankakee County Board and the Garden of Prayer is my Uncle Robert, who my grandparents proudly raised as their own son.
Do I participate with the vision of God in Prayer? I was very instrumental in moving it to where it is now, along with the teamwork of my sisters Vernice and Michael, Marcus, all of those that were basically raised up under Granny, and again in our DNA was planted that love for not only youth but for people that just needed help in general. Because I work in education and I have worked in it for the last 19 years, 7 years at the junior high, 5 years at the high school, and now 5 going on 6 years at the elementary level, which I consider to be the most challenging level, because these are students that are, or kids that want to be adults and yet at the same time want to be children. Every generation is good, but we're going to lose a great amount to a undisciplined society. We cannot continue to have an 8-track ministry in a DVD society.
Garden of Prayer's after-school program gives careful attention to each child's needs and with tangible results. In 2010, it was voted #1 in the state of Illinois and received the prestigious Best Practice Award that same year. A true highlight of Garden of Prayer programs are various trips planned to emphasize the beauty of what the world past a child's own environment has to offer. Many of the children have barely left their own neighborhoods or even their own homes. They now have an opportunity to see local events and Chicago landmarks up close and personal. as well as the unforgettable experience of seeing the Chicago Bears and the Chicago Bulls. What began in 1989 as the Life on the Farm program is still going strong as a safe haven for kids to stay busy while their parents worked. It's a summer camp which runs 8 weeks, 5 days a week, 8 hours a day. Athletic programs and workshops are just the tip of the iceberg. Tremendous involvement from the municipal sector brings safety awareness and a greater knowledge to instill in the youth overall. Garden of Prayer has its very own award-winning African dance troupe, another first for Kankakee County. A favorite for kids is a day trip to Indiana Beach for a great time where they can just be kids. Planning for the summer camp itinerary is a heavy-duty task which involves intense and meticulous preparation.
It's very important. When a child comes to camp, no earphones, no cell phones, none of that. That has to remain outside because we want the child to make use of every moment of learning while they're in summer camp. Increased performance that the children have learned through their school year, we want to maintain it and increase it during the summer so they be even more prepared for the upcoming school year. So that is one of the main reasons why we want to have summer camp.
Groups of about 80 children or more from all races and backgrounds attend the camp each week for a memorable and lasting experience. Happiness is unwrapped by children from all over who come to enjoy the Christmas toy giveaways. And a food pantry serving families in need. The 2004 Governor's Hometown Award was given to the Garden of Prayer in recognition of outstanding volunteer services in the surrounding community. The Governor's Cup Award was also given that same year, the first ever for Kankakee County. The following year, in 2005, brought yet another milestone with my grandparents celebrating their 60th wedding anniversary.
Not a say a great push or not a great thing. It's a small thing. It's just like the rudder on a big ship. The rudder on the big ship is small, but it can turn that ship about. It can push across the ocean, push across the sea. Because what's in that rudder? It's power in that rudder. So it's power and love. Yeah.
Beyond these defining moments, work with more facilities has continued. Auntie Bobby's Place is a home for young girls designed as a place for them in a family setting. The name itself is taken from a nickname of endearment to Mrs. Maloney that she's had for most of her life. The home was renovated with many hours of manpower. This place may sound a bit familiar to those who aren't from Illinois. Pembroke Township is a 53 square mile section in the southeastern corner of Kankakee County. There are 5,000 estimated residents here, though only 2,800 of them are officially counted. Within this township is Hopkins Park, home to about 800 people, and the entire area is over 90% African American. This information might not sound like a big deal, but as the third poorest area in the United States, that's just the start. The average household income in Illinois is $56,000, but here it's less than half of that amount. 44% of the people here live in various levels of poverty, including some of the most primitive and heart-wrenching stages. The houses here may look abandoned, but there are people living in some of them. Plumbing and running water is a luxury. Trash is burned here because there is no disposal service. Some of the dirt roads are so rugged that driving on them too fast will cause damage to vehicles. Shacks and trailers are made into makeshift restaurants. There is no major supermarket here, just several bars and churches. The government closed 2 of the 3 schools here and shut down the police force. Nestle Clinical Nutrition was a food plant which closed its doors for good. It employed 100 people on 2 shifts and manufactured vitamin-enriched liquid food products for the healthcare industry. Unemployment jumped to 5 times the rate of the entire state. Pembroke was once a stop along the Underground Railroad during the 1860s for runaway slaves heading to free states in the North. During the Great Depression, blacks who settled here had found a way to support themselves with farming and raising horses and livestock. Pembroke was taken from the name of an old roadside tavern where early travelers stopped. Now, it's a name that's infamously synonymous with economic misery. For those who have been here, the grimness cuts through like a knife. However, 15 years of national reports ranging from the New York Times, Oprah Winfrey, and People magazine has led to few results. The Garden of Prayer was intent with not overlooking this hard-hit community and was applauded with recognition for this. Those who lived here would not be out of reach or unworthy of love.
Believe it or not, those kids are so grateful. Those are the most grateful kids we've ever worked with, as well as their parents, because they know that there are very few resources out there in Pembroke, if any, and to have someone to come out there and work with their children, to work with them and their families, they're very grateful, and that's why we continue to do what we do in Pembroke. I believe that it is our responsibility to serve all kids, period, bottom line, to help all families, period, bottom line, from wherever they come from. And then we have a duty and a responsibility to help those that need it most, because that's what my grandmother did. Every year she would make, during Thanksgiving and during the holidays, during Christmas, she would make baskets of food. She would literally kill geese, chop their head off and make up a goose dinner. And we would have to travel around Pembroke and hand out the goose dinners to those families that need it most. And we still do it to this day. Of course, we're not killing any geese, but we receive donations, or we just, out of the goodness of our own hearts.
A man who's worked with children all over, including Pembroke, has a vivacious personality that the kids love. Alex grew up on the farm as a kid and was mature beyond his years. With the same dedication and focus, he fulfills responsibilities in Garden of Prayer's educational services.
Garden of Prayer has been a part of my life, all of my life. Officially came on the Garden of Prayer in a full-time capacity in 2005. As far as myself and my role in Garden of Prayer, I always knew that I would be affiliated with Garden of Prayer. I always knew that I would always be a part of Garden of Prayer. To what capacity? I did not foresee what we do now back in 97, 98. Not many people, African Americans that they can say, they grew up on a farm that was run by African Americans. And in my youth, my younger days, the farm was not just, you know, a horse here and a chicken here. It was a working farm with a lot of animals. We were kids, but we got up at 6 o'clock, 5:30 in the morning, had oatmeal every morning, and we would have to work in the field.
Kids today, they need to evaluate themselves. What I mean by that is not to find out who they are or what they are. They already know what they are and who they are. It's what they want out of life.
A lot of times when they're out in the community, they're kids, but they have to play the roles of adults. They have to make sure they get food for not only them, but for their siblings. They have to make sure their mother or father that's an alcoholic, they get their treatment, their medicine, their enough hours to sleep off some depression or something like that. So they are placed in the roles of parents. So when they come, we try and give them the opportunity to just be a kid. The world has written off this generation and called it a lost generation. And of course, we can't go out and save everybody. But every child that comes through our doors, every child that we come in contact with, it's our responsibility and it's our mandate to love them.
The farmhouse was expanded over the years to operate as one of 3 fully operational group homes for teens ages 15 to 21, with yet another home designed for further independent living into adulthood on Momence's east side. Garden of Prayer has developed lasting partnerships with businesses, which have in return honored the importance of giving back through sacrifice, time, and service. By the time my grandmother reached her 80s, she had watched the organization, which she co-founded with her husband, mushroom to 6 times its size. For decades, she poured her love into a multitude of abused and neglected children and helped to lead them down successful paths. Granny wasn't just her name, it was her golden crown of honor. At 86, 2 days before Christmas of 2011, she succumbed to heart failure. Her life and her works were never in vain, and she was never a quitter. She married Grandpa on his 23rd birthday, and he never left her side for a spellbinding 66 years. Her spirit lives on, not just in her biological family, but in the family of people fortunate enough to have known her, a number too great to count.
I go to the grave, recite about 2 times a week, 2 times a day, in the morning and afternoon. And to make me pleased is not have the heaviness on me. I miss her so much.
Hundreds gathered at the farm for the annual Jordan family reunion, traveling from as far as 16 different states. A heavy downpour of rain didn't stop anyone. The event culminated at the Jordan Center, 20 miles west. As the place quickly filled, Mrs. Maloney was busy, but still showed her undying attitude of serving others. As one could expect, there was a ginormous amount of food prepared with tender, loving care. Michael Maloney displayed TLC himself while humbly serving hundreds of hungry relatives.
God is good. God is great. Let us thank Him for our food. Amen.
History would highlight this event. My grandfather turned 90.
2, 3.
Thank you. I'm 90 years old.
Close enough. Your family would be here to share some special time with you. And looking around, everybody came to family reunion, but they also came just to see you.
I've had good times and bad times, but this is the best time I ever had. My tour times and all that, but this family time is the greatest time of my life. Because I love family. I love my family. First of all, family first. I want to leave you with the family. Always family first. They come first before anything. Then anything after that is last. Family first. God bless you.
All right.
From the baby boy out of the 10. And everybody going but me. All my brothers, all my sisters. I have one sister. I'm the last one.
My grandparents did not just grow cabbage and corn. They helped people grow. They'd see a harvest of transformed lives, but not without sowing good seeds that were fertilized with their blood, sweat, and tears. My grandparents were envied at times by people because of their success. They were one of the first prosperous black farming families in the county to own and maintain a lot of property and bountiful crops. But it was never about possessions, and it was so much more than corn. They were privileged to enjoy the American dream with a white picket fence and a farmhouse on a hill, all of which they freely and gladly shared with others. There's a road to the east of the farmhouse, 16500 East, and it's pretty easy to miss when you're zooming by on Highway 114. The unofficial name is Hartman Road. It's an unpaved gravel road that's only 1 mile long. The name comes from the Hartman family, my grandparents' neighbors, who have gotten along very well with them since moving to the farm 40 years ago. Heading south on the road, the Hartman property is on the left, my grandparents on the right. The road isn't used much most of the time, except as an access road to a farm that sits near the end on the left. During summer camp, Grandpa would have the kids, mainly the boys, jog down this road early each morning as part of an exercise routine, prepping the kids for their daily activities. There aren't many residences on this road, so the kids didn't have to worry about getting run over. A peaceful tranquility is felt here with a calming and absolute nothingness. At the end of the road, the signs are inconspicuously buried in weeds and are somewhat insignificant. This road bears many similarities to Garden of Prayer. Walking the full mile makes me think of walking a mile in my grandparents' shoes and feeling tired along the way, but refusing to quit. The road is unpaved, like the rugged paths in life where things just are not easy. The road stops at a T intersection. You can go either left or right. Decisions in life can be a real challenge, and doing what's best and what's right is often more of a battle than taking the easier shortcut. It's a lonely road that depicts moments in life where one has to suffer, sometimes alone, for a person to gain his or her own experiences and grow in wisdom. I walked this road many times during my own time at the Garden of Prayer, and I can never be grateful enough for how much this place was a part of my very existence. Just like Hartman Road doesn't stand out much from any other country road, trying to make a difference isn't the most popular. You may be overlooked, ridiculed, underestimated, or just plain written off, but you'll know in your heart that none of these things matter. When all is said and done, integrity wins.
More children, more children. As I said again, there's a lot of children just all they need just a little help and make a difference in their life.
A legacy only can go as far as you take it in terms of how you train the next generation. You show them the importance of what was being transpired from the beginning and what it means to continue it